This has been a bit of a long section, but we've got one more topic to cover around creating tables, inserting data, constraints. We're going to talk about this key portion that we see printed out. Currently, it's empty when we describe one of our tables. So I described cats4 or any of our tables so far. Key just has nothing there. So what is this key thing? Well, right now with our table, I could insert rows that are identical to one another. In fact, I could do that very easily, right? If I just insert empty cats, we get those default values. So now if I select star from cats4, we have a whole bunch of rows that are completely identical. And maybe that's fine to have cats that have the same name and the same age, but it makes it really hard to work with these rows and distinguish them from one another. It's just really a challenge. In the real world, if we had data that looks like this, we would make sure we added on some sort of unique identifier. And this is a really common thing to do in the world of SQL, not just MySQL, but pretty much all of SQL, not pretty much. All of SQL, definitely all of SQL. We add unique IDs to rows so that we can differentiate them even when all the other data looks the same. So this is something we'll do for almost every single table you ever make, is add some form of a unique identifier. So in our case, we could do something very simple, just add a numeric ID that starts at 1 and then goes to 2, 3, and 4. And this is a really common thing to do, not just to have a unique ID, but to just have it be an integer that starts at 1 and then goes up by 1 for each row. So this way, even if we all have, every row is Monty Tabby 10, they're still guaranteed to be unique as long as the cat ID is unique. So there's a couple ways of doing this. One is, I guess, just make this column and say it's a number, but that doesn't necessarily require it to be unique. If I just made an integer column, well, what would stop me from adding 1 and then 1 and then 1 and then 1 in the same way that all the ages can be set to 10? We don't want to do that. Instead, we're going to declare a column, the ID column, the primary key for this table. So a primary key is a fancy way of saying a unique identifier. We'll talk about something called foreign keys later. So key is a term in the world of SQL. Primary key is going to be some column that's used as a unique identifier for each individual row. So they have to be unique within the table. So when we define a table, we can add on the primary key constraint to some column, usually an ID column. So here I have a cat ID, which honestly I'd probably just call ID. We know that it's in the cats table, but just to make it clearer here, I called it cat ID. It's a number. It can't be null. Now we're going to come back to this not null thing in a moment. And it's a primary key. So that tells MySQL this, it's not only required, but it has to be unique. So if I just copy and paste this and put it in my terminal here, first of all, if I do a describe the table, which I called unique cats, we'll see that key is set to pri for primary for cat ID. So what this means is that it has to be there, it has to be unique. If I try and insert into unique cats and I insert cat ID, name, and then age, values, we have, I don't know, we'll start with 1, and then name can be bingo, age can be 2. We insert that, it works great, as far as we can tell. Now, if I recall that line, and I try and do the same thing, but this time my cat that I'm inserting is called Bongo, and Bongo is 3, but I leave 1 as my cat ID, I get an error. It says duplicate entry 1 for this key, this unique primary key. You can't do that. If I do a select star from unique cats, we don't see that second row we tried to insert. So we have to have that unique value. I could then go back and say, all right, values 2 will be my cat ID. Now this is kind of annoying, right? To have to keep going and manually adding in some unique number. There's nothing stopping me, by the way, from just jumping to 999 or negative 99. It's not a constraint that says this thing has to go up by 1. Instead, it just says it's a primary key, it has to be unique, and it has to be a number because we said it was an integer. Anyway, I think I will stop here. We have a bit more to talk about with primary keys in the next video, but I want to keep you sane and keep your hair not pulled out of your head. So I'll split it, and I'll see you in a second. I don't know if it makes a difference. I don't think so.